What's up, fam? You are watching The Sweat. I am Emerson Lotzia. We've got all the NFL, NBA, and NHL vibes your heart desires tonight, but our show tips off with the return of college basketball, and that means the return of Hidden Jewels. I didn't think we still had this segment, but apparently we do.
Yeah.
Hello, Julian Edlow. How are you, partner?
I'm doing a whole lot better now that college basketball and Hidden Jewels is back.
Yes, I know. I can see the excitement on your face. This segment, though, just to remind everyone at home, is when Julian gives us his favorite sportsbook picks. And tonight, it's going to be the basketball slate, college basketball. Starting with number 3 Kansas and number 4 Duke at MSG. You're sticking to the first half total in this one. Please tell me why.
Yeah, I mean, this tournament at MSG is awesome. Just the fact that we get to see the top 4 teams in the country go head-to-head. But I think everything combines here for a great play on the first half under. Duke and Kansas are really good teams, but generally good teams get going defensively much quicker than they get going offensively in the season. And then we also have the hype factor. They're going to be playing on a neutral court, which generally, when you're talking college kids, it takes them out of their natural surrounding, puts them into MSG, under the spotlight. Everything's going to be different from these small college stadiums. I think these teams get off to a slow start and hit the first half under there at MSG.
Yeah, you mentioned it. All top 4 teams in action, that rare 1 versus 2 matchup here. Michigan State taking on Kentucky. Opening night, DK Sportsbook has the Spartans at 2.5-point favorites. Do you see them covering?
I do. I like Michigan State here. Kentucky's a good team, but they generally, under John Calipari these last couple of years, have taken a little bit of time to come out of the gate just in terms of expectations. Kentucky is going to beat most teams because they're ranked number 2. They're just extremely talented. But against the spread the last 2 seasons, Kentucky's just 2-8 in their first 5 games of each of the last 2 years against the spread. So it's taken them some time to live up to expectations. Whereas you take this Michigan State team, and they probably are getting the best player in the country returning, that being Cassius Winston, the point guard that took them to the Final Four last year, returning for his senior season. So he's probably going to play 40 minutes, have the ball in his hands the entire game. I want that guy making the decisions for my team, so I'm going to trust Michigan State to prevail here.
Okay, looking at the Fresno State-Oregon game, you love the Ducks to cover that 14.5-point spread because...
Yeah, big number, but Oregon's the real deal, and we slept on them, and rightfully so, last year. They struggled at times. They had a lot of injuries, and they've still even lost some kids to the NBA, at least to the G League level. But that team had no business being in March Madness, but they worked their way in because they just dominated at the end of the Pac-12 season, dominated the Pac-12 tournament, and won it. And then made a lot of noise as a 12 seed. I think they were a lot of people's favorite 12 seed in March Madness last year, and prevailed and won some games in that tournament. So again, they have a great point guard in Peyton Pritchard. I think that they have enough talent on this team to really blow some bad teams out early in the season.
Last one here, Jules. You're also taking a gander at the St. Mary's, Wisconsin game. The Badgers covering this 4.5-point spread, question mark?
Yes, exclamation point. +4 underdogs for Wisconsin. That's
Woo.
Pretty rare. And I know that St. Mary's is a good team, but this is going to be a low-scoring game, a low total. To be able to get those 4.5 points with a team like Wisconsin that we so often see in, like, grinders of a game, really low scoring, I think points are going to be at a premium in this one, and I think Wisconsin's being a little underrated here.
Hoagies and grinders, Julian. Hoagies and grinders. Have a good night, my dude. We're chasing and fading some NBA bets on the DK Sportsbook side after this.
College basketball season is underway. I'm Brendan Glasheen, in with your DraftKings update. Still got to wait 133 days for the madness to begin in March and 153 days for a champion to be crowned. Who's counting? I know. Let's enjoy the year. But here are the teams with the best odds over on the DK Sportsbook to start the season to win this season's national title. The top 6 are all preseason top 10 nationally ranked teams. The ACC is well represented. Duke and Kentucky are both at plus 800. Preseason number 1, Michigan State and North Carolina are slated at plus 900. Then Kansas, followed by Louisville. Reigning champion Virginia closely behind at plus 1,800. A lot of eyes will be on this week's Champions Classic, which features 4 of those top 6 teams with the best odds. Kansas and Duke square off tonight at MSG. Then Michigan State and Kentucky face off in the Garden Wednesday night. Excellent, juicy matchups. We're going to anyway, but you really can't read too much into just one game. But fascinating to see how these teams match up with each other. We could very well be watching Final Four or championship previews here. Also, keep in mind, there are way more conference matchups early in the season. Those are great measuring sticks for the dance, and it's an overused word, but there's a ton of parity across college hoops. Consider a Cinderella story.
Okay, we've got a 6-game slate cooking around the association tonight. So let's talk about it with these 3 gentlemen. DraftKings contributors, Gary and Thorne, RotoWire's Nick Whalen, Shadow League's Karin Phillips. Chasing or fading the following DK Sportsbook bets, guys. LeBron's Lake Show rolling right now. Winners of 5 straight. They're 7-point favorites in Chicago. Would you chase them with the points, Karin?
This is a chase. Like, it's the Bulls. It's that simple. Like, there's no deep analysis. There's no stats. It's LeBron versus the Bulls.
Nick, talk to me. Chasing hard, huh?
I'm chasing it. I'm kind of surprised this number's not a little bit bigger based on how these two teams have fared. I think, public opinion has kind of shifted back in favor of the Lakers after that opening night loss, now to reel off 5 straight wins. I don't think this is going to be a massive blowout in favor of the Lakers. Still a little bit concerned about that offense. It's been a bottom-half offense in terms of offensive rating. Kyle Kuzma's been a little bit sluggish, and as Karin alluded to, the Bulls are not very good. The Lakers, LeBron, historically take care of bad teams, so I think they win this one, maybe not by 20, but by more than 7.
All right, Gary, and should this number be bigger?
Yeah, I had a similar thought. I was surprised this was only 7 points. I mean, look, the Lakers haven't just won 5 straight games. They're also 5-1 ATS for the season, so they're covering too. And generally they cover by quite a bit. They've got the best defensive rating in all of basketball, which is, in a vacuum, a problem for any team, but especially so for the Bulls, who cannot shoot. So I just feel like this is going to be a pretty lopsided affair.
All right, 2 of the league's worst offenses facing off in OKC. The over-under, just 202.5. Thunder hosting the Magic. Bad offenses, but good defenses, maybe. Nick, how do you feel about chasing the under?
Oh, absolutely. Give me the under. This is, probably in the early going, maybe the ugliest game of the year that we'll see. And at least there's some fun players, on each side. This isn't a Hornets-Cavs type of matchup, but 2 bottom 5 defenses against 2 bottom 5 offenses. You can sign me up for that under. That is, the Magic haven't even scored 100 points yet this season. I was shocked when I was researching for this that they haven't done that. That's pretty insane in the year 2019. OKC really struggled against all but the worst defenses in the league that they faced this year. Not a lot of shooting on the court for either team. Terrence Ross has been terrible. And he's really kind of the main floor spacer for Orlando. Denver only got to 91 points against this Magic defense the other night. It's a really low number, 202.5, but I'll sweat it out and go under.
Gary, and a team in this game hasn't hit the century mark yet. Come on, man. The under sounds like a go-to.
Yeah. They're really baiting us to take the under here. And I'm going to take that bait. I'm a sucker sometimes, and this is one of those spots, I guess. Let's start with the optimistic view of why this goes under, which is just we are dealing with 2 of the top 5 defenses in the league. These are 2 of the only 5 teams allowing fewer than 100 points per 100 possessions so far this season, so that's nice. But really the reason, and Nick alluded to this, is Orlando can't score. They have the lowest effective field goal rate of any team in the NBA through 2 weeks. They can't do anything, and to top it all off, they also have one of the slowest paces in the entire league. So going up against an Oklahoma City team that's hit the under in 5 of their 6 games, I just can't think of a reason this goes over.
Karin, can you think of a reason this goes over?
Nope. Not only has Orlando not scored 100, like OKC has only broken 103 times in their first 6 games. We talked about the defense. That's great that these teams play defense, but you can play great defense and still get buckets. It's like they were saying, like, Orlando's really bad. Orlando's really bad because everybody on that team plays the same freaking position. which I do not understand. They have like 48 power forwards, and everybody on their team is the same height and does the same. It's the weirdest thing in the world to me, which also blows my mind because this is the same Orlando team that beat the Raptors in Game 1 in the playoffs and had us being like, oh, wait a minute, Toronto's being Toronto. And so now we look at this Orlando team with all this talent. And OKC really has some talent too, with a couple of guys that you would like to see play basketball on a night-to-night basis. But this has just been ugly. And like they said, with these two teams get together, it's going to be super ugly. Take the under on this. Like, this is going to be like college basketball bad, ugly. Just goes on because Orlando's got everybody that's 6'9". Just do that and just go home.
All right, let's go 4 hours south of the Turnpike there in Florida. The Miami Heat, looking great so far this season, sitting at 5-1, best record in the league, but underdogs against the Nuggets. Would you chase the Miami money line, Garion?
It's certainly live. Look, the stats back up how good the Heat have been so far this season. They lead the NBA in net rating, and they haven't had Jimmy Butler for half of their games. But there's still just part of me that does not want to bet against the Nuggets in Denver. And you go back to last season, and speaking of net rating, they had the highest net rating, 10.6 points per 100 possessions, of any Western Conference team playing at home. They only lost 7 times at the Pepsi Center. I just think it's a little too early for me to be picking an upstart Heat team against a Nuggets team that I still think is one of the 6 or 7 best in the NBA.
All right, if you guys hear any bells and whistles, behind me, we are having a fire drill currently in the building. They are just testing. Everything is fine. Nobody panic. Nobody freak out. Karin, quickly, what do you think here, pal? Do you chase the Miami money line?
Yes, I'm chasing it for the simple fact that the Bad Boys 3 new trailer came out today. So I'm all in on everything Miami. So ride together, die together. Jimmy Butler, Justice Winslow. Go Heat.
Okay, Nick, talk to me. Sorry, I'm distracted.
Yeah, understandable. Like Gary alluded to, playing in Denver is always difficult, and that's kind of the only real case that I could build other than, the Nuggets are the home team. The home team kind of gets some inherent points, but I think Miami's the better team right now. Like Gary said, number 1 in net rating in the league, and they haven't had their best player for half the season. And beyond that, they've basically been missing at least one key piece in every game so far, whether it's Butler, whether it's Justice Winslow, even Dion Waiters. I don't know how I forgot his name. Obviously hasn't played yet. They just got James Johnson back. Like, they've been doing this without a complete roster. So I think there's still an opportunity for them to play even better. And then you look at the Nuggets, they haven't been great so far. They were my pick to win the Western Conference in the regular season. They've been middle of the pack defensively. They're 19th heading into tonight in offense. Just doesn't really seem like they've hit the ground running in the same way that a lot of people expected they would, based on how they broke out last season.
Guys, how about a game where there are some points expected to be scored, and a lot of them? Spurs and Hawks, highest over-under on the slate, 220.5. Who's getting after the over? Karin?
No, as a part of this Atlanta media, I got that John Collins email this morning with my hopes and drinks.
Yeah.
We got Trae Young coming back on the bum ankle. John Collins is gone, which is going to change everything in their lineup. Do they go extra big, or does Lloyd Pierce go really small? I don't know what they're going to do. I'm staying away from this.
Yeah, Nick, Karin makes some good points there. You staying away as well?
I am. I'm taking the under. This is a tough one, but I really don't trust the Hawks offense, which is maybe not something I thought I'd be saying a couple of weeks ago. They're bottom 5 team in pace right now, which when you see Trae Young highlights, doesn't really add up. They're 24th in offensive rating, and they do get Trae Young back tonight. But even with him missing just one game, they're dead last in the league in made threes. So, even though he might be giving you 6 or 7 threes on a given night, not many other guys on this roster are really contributing in that area. Of course, no John Collins tonight or going forward. And the other thing, we just got this note before the show started. Trae Young's going to be limited to 30 minutes tonight. So when Trae Young's off the floor, I don't know who's going to do the scoring for this team. 30 minutes is a decent workload for him, but that still leaves 18 minutes where someone else is out there running the point. And without John Collins, I just don't know who's going to score the basketball for Atlanta.
All right, Gary, and so go ahead, explain to me why you're going to take the under, unless everyone has made those points already.
No, I think like Nick said, the minutes cap is slightly concerning. You think about what Young's usage rate has been without John Collins on the court so far this season. It's up around 38%. which, does signify that Trae Young is quite the talented player, but it could also signify that there is no one else on this team they trust to score. And I think that's really going to be the case. The Hawks are still being priced, and these over-unders are still being set up like their last year's team, the team that led the NBA in pace. They are not that team anymore. They run a much slower operation. They've gone under their past 5 games. I just can't take the over here.
Also, Cam Reddish and Horter are still like on minutes restrictions, which is really killing their 3-point percentages.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. We're going to take a look at the DFS side of tonight's NBA action after Pat Mayo talks a little bit of the Patriots rookie, N'Keal Harry.
Where would you put N'Keal Harry into these rankings? I purposely did not put him in because I wanted to get your take on this, because I don't know. I don't know when he's actually going to be activated, what his role in this offense is actually going to be. Like, there was a lot of Ben Watson on the field for the Patriots last night, and this is getting to the harder part of their schedule, which may actually help out some of these receivers a little bit because they're going to be playing in more competitive games, and they probably won't be behind like they were on Sunday night, but they might have to throw a little bit more. The issue is with Dorsett, with now Sanu and Edelman, is there room for Harry here? Like, does he knock Dorsett off his perch? I don't know. Maybe he ends up splitting some of these receiver snaps with either Jacoby Myers or Ben Watson, but like, do you really want the 4th wide receiver on the Patriots, knowing James White is probably still ahead of you on the receiving pecking order?
Yeah, it's definitely a good point at the end, too, with James White. He's like a secondary option for this team, which almost puts him and probably puts him just not needed. He'll stay on the waivers, and if you need to snag him 1 week, you can. I'm not going to make a priority to pick up Harry right now. I'm just not going to get there. It's a spot where you saw Sanu they traded for, so he's going to stay on the field. 100% of the snaps for him in a game where they had to throw a ton, ran a ton of 11 personnel last night as they trailed early and for the most part of the game. Edelman's not coming off the field, 100% of the snaps for him. And Brady likes Philip Dorsett. Like he says, and he's preached out and kind of just said that he likes when Dorsett's on the field. He feels comfortable targeting him downfield, and he played 99% of the snaps last night. So I just don't see him coming in. If anything, maybe he starts to take a little bit of the snaps away from, I would imagine, Dorsett. It's just not a spot that I think it does. And then behind him, yeah, like you said, you have Jacoby Myers, who was a standout in the preseason, a guy that they like, a guy that Brady likes as well. So he just kind of falls into that 4th or 5th option at best, which for that single team is not great for fantasy.
What do you think is a more accurate overreaction to the Patriots and Baltimore game? I saw both of them floating around. Is it, on the one hand, Brady's actually finished now that they actually played someone, he's an old man and he's no good? Or 2, Bill Belichick didn't show off the real defense for when they play Baltimore again, and they'll be super surprised.
It's definitely the real defense one, like as if they didn't want to win that game. The biggest, they're both overreactions. I mean, Brady, the way he has been winning for 2 to 3 years straight now is just dinking and diming for the most part. And yes, he can still complete passes downfield. He's been a little bit worse there this season, a lot worse there this season. But the whole scheme is just for him to throw it short. I mean, that's why you get Sanu, a guy who's been a slot wide receiver and can play on the outside and run those routes. So there's no worry with the way that Brady fits in to this offense and the way that they want to run things. And obviously experience helps that. The defense was trying their hardest last night. It was just a total mismatch in terms of what Lamar Jackson was doing on the offensive side of it. And it's just insane that really one player in that game, and there was a big play on defense that shifts things, but even early on, one player can just cause so much havoc in Lamar Jackson that a defense that has looked that good looked really dumb on a handful of plays.
Okay, we are testing the fire alarms here. Again, only a test. Everyone is okay. Everyone is alive and well. Week 10, though, of the NFL season is here. Week 9 was wild, with the highlight being a cat of Garfield-like proportions, but with more agility, crashing the Monday Night Football party. Now crashing this show, DraftKings contributors, Reed Fowler. Hey, you hear the alarm, bud. Jeff Ulrich, yeah. Pierce Dietrich, you guys are here for some price check. Does it sound bad on your end? Jeff?
I'm so sick of this fire alarm. Do you know how many times it's interrupted a video of mine?
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on there. I don't know.
We're just trying to make sure everyone is safe in case of an actual emergency one day, so I do appreciate that. Timing? Not ideal. Not gonna lie. But real quick, Jeff, hey, that black cat from Monday night, where would you price him or her?
Amazing. I mean, you can't put him all the way up to McCaffrey because you don't know how the coaches are going to use the cat. But, $7K range. I mean, yeah. Okay, Pierce, what do you think? Is that too much to pay for this black cat?
I think the price is inflated by the play-by-play. You take out the audio, and it's not a big deal.
Reed, again, very agile, a little slow though, took close to about 30 seconds to get from the 3-yard line to across the goal line.
Yeah, well, he has that cat-like reflex. I had to go there. And I'm pricing him above Melvin Gordon. We talked about Melvin Gordon yesterday. I like the cat more than Gordon.
Now to the humans. Christian McCaffrey's price, a season high this week. That's after it was a season high last week, up $500, now $10,500 against the Packers. Is he a must roster again, Mr. Fowler?
Yeah, I mean, look at his past 4 weeks, right? When you look at GPPs or cash, the multiplier that you want is about 2.5x, 2.5x. And again, that's his floor over the last 2 weeks in terms of what he's producing over his price tag. Last week, 4x, right, above that price tag of $10,000, which is the highest of what we've seen him. Now he's 10.5, but the weeks previous, 2.6, 2.5, and then 5.8x above his price. And so if the price is increasing, his production is still staying at that multiplier. And now he gets Green Bay. Green Bay is giving up the 5th most DK fantasy points to opposing running backs.
Love
and so not only is the matchup there, it's also what he's been doing ever since he's been getting that rock and all of that production. Jeff and I talked about it yesterday. The only thing that worries you about McCaffrey is if he gets an injury, and that's a little scary. So other than that, this price is not bad.
Okay, Pierce, any concerns about rostering this guy at this price point?
You know, I've got a crying baby in the other room. You want me to bring that in too and just double down
please.
on this?
Absolutely, please. Whatever would help distract me from the alarm going off 3 feet above my head.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great player. He's the focal point of this offense. What this really feels like is last year in NBA DFS with James Harden, where he just kept going off and they kept raising his price, and it really just didn't matter. That's basically where we are. He's facing up in a really good matchup against the Packers, 26th in run DVOA, so it would be hard to imagine that he doesn't hit again. We don't give enough credit to Norv Turner here. Norv Turner took over the offensive coordinator play calling last year, and he just gets better every week. The offense is pretty much geared completely towards Christian McCaffrey. This would not be the week to jump off the McCaffrey bandwagon.
Jeffrey, you're on that bandwagon hard, aren't you?
I mean, if his name was Christian McCaffrey, I'd probably be paying like 12K for him, right? But look, yeah, we talked about it yesterday. I'll say this. The one thing that makes him a little less appealing this week, it's not even the price. It's just the lack of value that we have on this slate. Last week, you had Jalen Samuels. You had guys like Preston Williams really cheap. Like, you had other options that made it really, really easy to fit in Christian McCaffrey. Don't necessarily have that this week. We don't have like a ton of value options popping up. But you know, it's only Wednesday, or it's only Tuesday. So by the time Friday rolls around, we might have a couple guys like that. But it might be a little harder to construct lineups with Christian McCaffrey this week. Doesn't mean you have to fade him. It just means it might not be like last week where everyone who used him had all these great value options. It also went off. But it's something to think about. He's still not overpriced, not even close.
Yeah, I could have read your whiteboard and kind of figured in the direction you were going to go in there. We have the strobe lights going now, so anyone in the Boston area has a fog machine, please DM me. Mark Ingram made a massive salary jump this week, up $2,100, now sitting at 7-1, facing the Bengals. Did he deserve this big of a jump, Pierce?
You know, isn't there a penalty if you don't leave during a fire alarm? I remember back in my college days, I was watching a baseball game and I set out a fire alarm and I got written up for that.
Yeah, so did you set it off yourself physically? You were one of those jerks who went and pulled the alarm?
No, it was actually really annoying because those things are so loud. But
yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
Here. Maybe an overreaction to last week's game. I can't see right. Look, you got the fear of a blowout here against Cincinnati. So how much run will he get in the blowout? And even in close games, he's barely out-snapping Gus Edwards. And in terms of red zone looks, Mark's got 24 this year. Gus Edwards, again, has 17. I don't see paying this price tag for a guy who, he's clearly the number one, but he doesn't get a number one workload, and he may not get a number one workload in this matchup this week.
Jeff, you like this price?
First of all, I just want to point out that apparently all Pierce did in college was watch baseball. I'm not shocked to hear that, but anyways. Look, I agree. I mean, it just feels like a fishy play to pay up for Mark Ingram here. I mean, Pierce kind of hit the stats I was going to hit on, but it's not like we're talking about a main carry running back. He's gotten over I think his high of the year is 19 carries. Like, that's not really what you're looking for in a $7,000 running back. I know the matchup is great. I guess in GPPs, he's still got to be on your radar because the matchup is so good. And he has proven that he can go off against these bad teams just like he did against Miami in week 1. So definitely, like, there's upside, but my God, like, the floor for a $7,000 running back, it's pretty bad for Mark Ingram. So kind of feels way overpriced.
Yeah, Reen, let's think about this. 115 yards against the Patriots, and 53 of them came on one run.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I think when we look at this guy's price tag in Ingram is, well, you have 6 teams on a bye. He had a great performance against the Patriots, a strong defense, and now he's got the Bengals, so another great matchup. And so you look at this matchup pricing, you see why he's there. I agree with these guys. I don't think you need to go there. You have Nick Chubb and Marlon Mack right below him, I think, are in better matchups. And so if you want to, pivot off of those guys or pivot off of Ingram to those guys, I think it's something that you can do. Now, granted, I think the ownership does get spread out in that range. And so to Jeff's point, for GPPs, I don't necessarily mind it because of his efficiency. But yeah, I like it.
Okay, the fire alarm has apparently stopped, which
it's still
means
ringing in my head, though.
Which means the video now moving forward, we can likely actually push out on social media. Galladay's price going all the way down despite a 26-point performance last week against the Raiders. Now only $7K facing the Bears. Did he deserve this price decrease, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. I would actually say his price isn't down enough. I mean, first of all, you just look at the players in his range. I mean, Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams. I mean, actually less than Kenny Galladay. I would take that in a heartbeat. And it's nothing against Kenny Galladay. His quarterback's playing well, but it's the matchup and it's the fact he's not really true number one in the sense that Marvin Jones is sitting there taking so many of the deep shots or red zone targets. Still got TJ Hawkinson, even Danny Amendola. So he's not really a true number one. And then you have just a bad matchup against the Chicago defense, who is still very good at just limiting the pass, limiting outside receivers. Even in this downturn they've gone through, they're still not letting huge games to wide receivers at all. So I think Galladay is well overpriced here. There's at least 2 players in that range I'd rather take over.
Okay, his price is down, Reed, but still overpriced?
Yeah, and if you follow Mike Tagliere on Twitter, I think he made a good point in one of his podcasts where the Bears, as a team or as a secondary, they don't give up a ton of DraftKings or a ton of fantasy points. But what they do is they do give up a ton of points to the wide receivers who are route technicians. So a guy like Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen had a decent game. Mike Thomas, these guys who can run their routes and who are on another level in terms of receiver than I think Kenny Galladay is. And on top of that, when you look at his price tag, yeah, I think it's a little inflated, but he has a decent matchup, right? He has a decent matchup, and I don't mind it, but I will say that when you look at just a totality of what he's been able to do in this season, granted, it's been nice. At the same time, I think when you have the Bears and how they defend the receivers and a guy like Galladay, I would pivot off of him.
Are you going to pivot off of him as well, Pierce?
Yeah, I would pivot away from him as well. I think they could have priced him down a little bit lower to make it a tougher decision, or at least put him more on the board. Right now, you would just pay up a little bit more for Mike Evans and feel really comfortable, as opposed to targeting the Bears, who have a really good pass defense. They limit long plays. They haven't given up a touchdown to a receiver in the last 5 games. You've got a low over-under. Probably should have lowered that price a little bit more to make players consider him more in play.
Okay, I think they're going to confirm that the fire alarm test is complete. That's complete. That's that right?
There we go.
That means we're done. Okay, cool. Everything works. The show will go on. I have one more question though, guys. Don't go anywhere, okay? Daniel Jones has shown glimpses of being a solid fantasy quarterback. Got a pretty favorable matchup this week when he faces the Jets. His salary increasing $600, now $5,700. Is he a good value play, Reed?
No. I mean, look what happened last night. Since this guy's got the starting job, he's been sacked 26 times. He's fumbled it 10 times. He's thrown 8 picks. And so, I mean, he had a glimpse, I think, as a good quarterback or a fantasy viable quarterback. And yes, he has some of these matchups that you do like, but a guy who's below him, Ryan Tannehill, $5,100 against an Indianapolis Colts team, I think is a better play, which is weird to say that now we're comparing in Week 10 Ryan Tannehill to Daniel Jones.
Gosh, that does sound weird.
Yeah, when you have a rookie quarterback, those turnovers do really hurt. And if you watch that game, that interception was a bad one, and he's just fumbling the ball too much, and he's losing his fumbles. So I don't think it's a value.
Is it a value, Pierce?
Yeah, I disagree with Reed. He has struggled in some of the tougher matchups, but he's played well in the average to below average teams that he's faced off against. And this is a below average team in terms of pass defense. This is one of the worst pass DVOAs in football and a really good run DVOA. So it's going to set up, at least funnel towards the pass. You're going to get some maybe rushing yards here. And as Reed pointed out, he has been sacked a lot, but you look at the Jets in terms of adjusted sack rate, the Jets are not very good at applying pressure to the quarterback. So, I mean, it's not the greatest play on the board, but it's definitely something you're going to consider going into the weekend.
Okay, Jeff, you like Daniel Jones here? You have another option in that price range?
No. I mean, he would be my option. I'm going to side with Pierce here. I feel like he could be even priced up, like just below or even around Jared Goff. I mean, yeah, okay, obviously we've got some bad games with Daniel Jones on the board now, and he's got some turnover issues, but we also know what his upside is. And that's 30-plus points. I mean, he's done that twice already. And like Pierce alluded to, they've been against bad teams. The Jets are an absolutely terrible secondary right now. They're brutal at guarding against the pass. I mean, you allow Gardner Minshew and Ryan Fitzpatrick in back-to-back weeks to throw 6 touchdown passes. I mean, come on. Like, this is one of the worst defenses in the league. Daniel Jones went off against Tampa Bay. There's no reason why he can't here. So just from a pricing perspective, yeah, I mean, Ryan Tannehill's kind of interesting. And I admit there's not much else in that range, but I mean, paying 57 for Daniel Jones is, while everyone else is kind of going to the top, I think that's probably the play if you're going to go cheap at quarterback.
No, I agree with you, Jeff, but look at his floor, too. Arizona and Washington, he only got you 13 or 14 DK fantasy points. And you talk about bad secondaries, those are some of the worst. And so I get it. There is value there, but we've seen also what his floor can be. And 5,700, you're not paying a ton, so I get that. And there's a lot of teams on bye, but I'd just rather go elsewhere.
Guys, I can tell you, when I roster a quarterback, I want more than 15 points. Okay?
Thanks.
You guys got it?
I don't. I want to make up points elsewhere. I want
Right.
to make it as
I
hard
can't
on
really hear
myself
you,
as
though.
possible.
It's ringing in my head.
You and I have some Nick Foles and Gardner Minshew topics to discuss coming up, Jeff. We're also going to have a little conversation about NFL point spreads with you three to close up the show. But next, we are dipping our toes into the NHL bargain bin with Chris Wassel.
What's happening? I'm Brendan Glasheen, and with this DraftKings update, there's real chatter about the Chargers moving across the pond to London. According to The Athletic's Vincent Bonsignor, the possibility has been broached among league personnel, and NFL owners are, quote, concerned enough about the team's situation in LA that they would provide the necessary support for a relocation to London if the Chargers pursue it. Well, you can cross venue off the checklist. Tottenham Hotspur Stadium opened earlier this year in North London. It was home for 2 of the 4 London games this season after the Across the Pond series concluded this past Sunday. Tottenham Hotspur seats over 62,000, while Dignity Sports Park is just a tiny little soccer stadium in Carson, California that seats just 27,000. Here's where things get a little tricky. The Chargers plan to join the Rams in 2020 at SoFi Stadium, a new $4.5 billion venue. The fan support in LA sways heavily the Rams' favor, though, so the Chargers might consider this move, especially with London's now documented embrace for the National Football League.
This all right, here we go. 3, 2. This NHL slate is ginormous, like 11 games ginormous. Lots of guys to pay up for. Lots of guys who are an absolute bargain as well. Let's find some value, and here to lend a hand is Awesemo.com's Chris Wassel. Woo! What's up, dude?
Hey, good evening. Good evening indeed.
You just missed the fire alarm test here.
Oh, I could hear it as I was being patched in.
Okay.
I've had a few horror stories in the last week of strange tales of fire alarms. So
oh wow,
I can definitely relate.
Okay, I'll have to find you on Twitter and get those stories. Let's start though. Again, bargain bin. Let's go with the centers. Who's an affordable guy you can insert into your lineup if you're going to be paying up elsewhere?
Okay, this is the ultimate guy that you want to put in basically just for floor value, and that is Jean-Gabriel Pageau, the Ottawa Senators. Yes, Ottawa is on the back end of a back-to-back. It doesn't look appealing. They're playing the New York Islanders, who have won 9 straight games. But this is a guy that often gets his points. He averages almost 11 DK points a game, which is at that magical, $400 a point range that you want now with the new DK scoring. And that makes him a very solid play, because even if he doesn't get a goal or assist, he might get you 3 or 4 shots. He might get you 3 or 4 blocks. Hey, if he gets you 3 blocks, that's the block bonus right there. That's an extra little boost that you probably weren't expecting from a center. The other guy would be Brandon Sutter of the Vancouver Canucks. He gets an occasional top 6 assignment. And look, they're playing St. Louis tonight. And let's be honest, St. Louis has not been as good as they were during their playoff run last year. They've given up a little bit over 32 shots per 60. So there's some offense to be had from the middle 6, and Sutter is a low price guy on Tuesday night.
Chris, take me to the wing department.
The wing department's always a fun adventure. Now, here's the thing that I've always said about this. When you're going through a big old 11-game slate, and this is going to be a theme a lot this month, so people have to really be patient. Now, what I did a little bit different tonight, at least for at least wingers, I went a little bit off the board.
Oh.
Now there's an oldie but goodie favorite named Tyler Toffoli from the Los Angeles Kings.
Oh yeah.
He was really good a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, the team stopped winning. Darryl Sutter was fired, all that good stuff. But now, this is a guy that's a perennial 20-goal scorer. He's 3,700 on DraftKings. 3,700.
What?
That's right. He's had God forbid you have a down year, you have a really bad coach that you hate, you don't like the way he, and he shuttles you down the line. Bottom line is the guy could score. And the last few games, he's shown that ability from the mid 2000 teens that everybody was used to with Toffoli. Now, the other guy is a little bit of a wild card, and that would be Here you say this 5 times fast. It'll be fun. Dominic Kubalik. Of the Chicago Blackhawks. Now look, Chicago San Jose expects to be this crazy sort of game tonight, and it could very well pan out. But either way, Kubalik is a guy that averages about 3 shots a game of late. And again, you're talking mid $3,000 price range here. This is about the bargain of the bargain bins when it comes to wingers. And I want guys that I know are going to get me a halfway decent floor. And this is a guy that can provide me a little bit of value.
Provide me some value, please, back on the blue line.
This is the best part. Now,
really?
Here. Right, because the thing with your defenseman, always when I'm concerned with defensemen, I'm looking for the following 2 things. And it all combines into one. We call it SABs. That's right. Shots and block shots.
Woo!
Yep. And we got acronym. Look, everybody has acronyms for everything.
I love acronyms.
Now, first off, we got Christopher Tanev of the Vancouver Canucks again. Because it seems like for some reason Vancouver's back end is very low priced compared to their upper tier guys like Peterson, Bozer, Horvat, etc. They're all up there, but Tanev not so much. And he's kind of he's a poor man's Alexander Edler for those that are looking out there, and he will get you a couple shots. He'll get you a couple blocks. And lately, he's even provided a few assists for our happy DK constituents. The other guy, a little bit more of a wild card, Brad Hunt. Look, Minnesota is abysmal on the road. I understand that, but somebody's got to score. And Hunt does have 4 goals on the season. He is at least worth a flyer out there in your deeper punt plays.
All right, finally, I need a goalie, not just any goalie, a cheap goalie.
You need a cheap goalie. Now, it's funny because I'm poking around and I'm looking and I'm like, I kind of like Carter Hart, but then will Philadelphia give up enough shots? I can't believe I'm saying, will Philadelphia give up enough shots to Carolina? But yeah, here we are, because Philly's one of the top 2 teams in allowing shots per 60. So he was out. And I start looking around like, you know what? Dallas has a little bit of an injury conundrum tonight. And as a matter of fact, one of their top 6 players, Rube Hintz, is out. And he was basically their speed guy that was allowing Sagan and Ben to, start to have a little bit of a resurgence. So it's like, all right, Dallas beat Colorado in Colorado. What if Colorado found a way to return the favor?
Oh.
Philip Grubauer is only $7,400 on DraftKings.
Get after it.
And at this point, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? Oh, he gets shelled. It's only $7,400. Hey, he gets shelled and saves 35 shots. You get a save bonus at least. It probably offsets your losses.
I love the new scoring. I love the new scoring in DraftKings for NHL.
It makes it made it a challenge at first for like the first maybe 2 or 3 big slates, and after that you got used to it just fine.
All right, my man. Have a phenomenal night. It's good to see you. Good to hear you again. Who to
Always.
pay? Yes, always. Who to pay up for in DFS on the NBA side of things is next.
This is Brendan Glasheen, and with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash, Hawks forward John Collins has been suspended 25 games for violating the NBA's anti-drug policy. The 22-year-old tested positive for growth hormone-releasing peptide 2. Here's a piece of Collins' statement to ESPN's Adrian Wojnarowski. I am incredibly frustrated and disappointed in myself for putting all of us in this position. I have always been incredibly careful about what I put in my body, but I took a supplement which, unbeknownst to me, had been contaminated with an illegal component. Collins is now working with the NBA Players Association to begin the appeal process. The former 2017 first-round pick has emerged as one of the league's most impressive young forwards the last 2 years. 17 points per game through 5 games this year for Atlanta. He's been a great sidekick for Trae Young, who, by the way, returns to the Hawks lineup after missing 2 games with an ankle injury. It's a bummer this duo likely won't be on the floor together for the next month and a half. We'll see how Young carries the burden offensively. It doesn't help one bit that he's working back from an injury at the ankle, but one way to look at it, it should be a high shot volume for Young with no Collins. His suspension, by the way, Collins, ends December 23rd.
Our NBA panel returns. DraftKings contributor Gary and Thorne, RotoWire's Nick Whalen, and the Shadow League's Karin Phillips need you guys to help me, to help the people at home, choose between the top options at the following positions. It's a segment we call Pick and Roll. Nick, the 2 top-priced options at point guard are LeBron James at $9,600 and Trae Young at $9,200. Who do you like more?
I got to lean towards LeBron. As we said in the last segment, Trae Young's going to have his minutes capped at 30 tonight, and, well, he's certainly capable of doing damage in that time. I think it does lower his ceiling against a pretty good San Antonio defense, and like we talked about earlier, this Atlanta offense, I think, is really going to struggle without John Collins. They were struggling before that, really leaning on a lot of young guys and really depending on Trae Young to be everything for this team. So while that's usually good for DFS purposes, I don't know that it's going to be great against San Antonio. And I think LeBron and the Lakers, they've made a point for this to be Anthony Davis's team early on, and I think that's going to be the case in his hometown of Chicago. But maybe that results in a little bit of reduced scoring for LeBron, but it's resulted in some great assist numbers. He leads the league in assists per game heading into this contest, and it's been one of those seasons already where you look and midway through the first quarter, LeBron already has 3 or 4 assists because they're trying to get Davis involved. So it's not one of those type of situations where LeBron has to get to 35 points to be productive. He could very well have 25, 12, and 11, and it could be a great night for him in DFS.
All right, Karin, how much you think Trae Young's going for tonight?
Not many.
Yeah.
You got to take LeBron in this slate. Just as a huge Trae Young fan, like you said, guys on the minute restriction, ankle still probably tender a little bit. You take away John Collins, that's his running buddy. And then you're just looking over at LeBron, like the homecoming game for AD. Like I'm expecting 30 alley-oops from LeBron to AD tonight to get the assist numbers up. I like point guard LeBron. I like the fact that we're seeing him solely playing this position since his rookie and second year in the league. But they're going to need Rondo back at some point to man that position from him. But in this slate, this is an easy one with the Hawks banged up and with Trae first game coming back.
Yeah, Gary, and then not even head-to-head Trae Young here against LeBron James. You got to just be cautious in general because of this minutes restriction with Trae Young tonight, right?
Yeah, again, 30 minutes is not like a death sentence.
No, it's not. It's not. But then no John Collins too, right?
I mean, the Collins thing is kind of interesting because look, I'm not going to sit here and say Jabari Parker is half the offensive player that John Collins is, but he's not nothing. And when you look at Trae Young's production so far this season, small sample, mind you, but when John Collins has not been on the court, Young has a 38.7% usage rate and is averaging over 1.8 DraftKings points per minute. So while I don't necessarily think I'm going to be using him tonight, we've got 24 more games where we can kind of experiment with how Trae Young, how voluminous his numbers can get without John Collins on the court. But yeah, it's LeBron if you're asking me to pick between these two guys, but I just like Anthony Davis more, and it's really hard to stack the two most expensive players on this slate. So I'll be honest, with a lot of my builds, I don't have either of these two gentlemen in there. But yeah, between these two, it's definitely LeBron.
All right, cool. Karin, I'm asking you to choose between the following. At shooting guard, we got Malcolm Brogdon, 8,200. Jimmy Butler, he's just $100 cheaper. Who would you rather pay up for?
As the cheap guy who's always trying to save money on this show.
Yeah, that's right.
You can tell me I get the better player for less money.
Yep, it's a steal.
Question I've ever been asked in the history of this show. Like, don't overthink this. Take Jimmy.
Darian, is this a very easy question for you to answer?
You know who loves overthinking stuff?
You.
This guy. This guy right here. I love Malcolm Brogdon on this slate. I think he's the guy you pay up for at point guard. I mean, you look at what he's done so far with the Pacers. The only game he hasn't reached 5x value was Sunday night, and he was $2,000 more expensive in that game. He's been price adjusted from $10,200 to $8,200. He's also averaging 1.5 DraftKings points per minute played without Miles Turner on the court. I like Jimmy, and Jimmy's been able to do some crazy stuff with his steal numbers. Like, he hasn't been efficient yet, and he's still put up crazy DraftKings points. But there are so many capable scorers on the Heat. I mean, as Nick mentioned earlier, this is like the first time we've seen the Heat at full strength this season. Give me Brogdon on a team that has no other places to go when it comes to scoring or initiating offense.
Nick, it's the killer bees. Brogdon or Butler? Who are you going with?
I'm going Brogdon as well for a lot of the reasons that Gary had mentioned. No Sabonis, no Turner in this game tonight. I think maybe that hurts Malcolm Brogdon from an assist production perspective, but I think it probably means more scoring responsibility for him as well. He's a pretty good rebounder for a guard. That's always something to look out for. But like Arian said with Butler, weirdly enough, we kind of thought this would be a one-man show. I think the big question when he signed with Miami was, okay, he's leaving a great situation in Philadelphia to go to a team that maybe doesn't have a clear number two. And it actually turns out they have 3 or 4 guys who've been really, really good with Butler in or out of the lineup. So it's not really a situation where I see Butler needing to take 20-plus shots per night to keep this team in games. So, he can do a lot of things like Arian said with his ancillary stats, with defensive numbers, but I'm going to side with the guy who, basically has to have a huge game for the Pacers to stay in it against what's a pretty bad defense in the Hornets.
Oh, Karin, looks like Gary and Nick are overthinking it again.
Way too much.
All right, guys, last one here at center. The top 2 dudes are Anthony Davis, who's 10K, Nikola Jokic, 9.4. Let's see, Gare Bear, is Davis worth paying the extra $600 for? It does sound like it's going to be a big night for him, as Karin mentioned earlier with the homecoming.
Yeah, I'm gonna make this.
Right?
I'm gonna make this acceptable for Karin. I know he doesn't want me to overthink this, so I won't. It's 100% Anthony Davis. I have Anthony Davis in every lineup tonight. He's the guy I am spending the money on. It's easy to say that about the highest priced player, that he's just in the best spot, but he is. If you want to go the narrative perspective, he's coming home. The Lakers have already made it pretty clear that this is going to be his team, or they're going to try to spoon feed him. And over his last 4 games, he's averaging 31 points, 13 rebounds, and 3 blocks. That's pretty damn good. Then on top of all that, you've got the Bulls, who have just hemorrhaged points to power forwards so far this season and have the lowest rebounding rate in all of basketball. If you can't stop Anthony Davis on the glass, it's going to be a really long night.
Ooh, Nick, is he in all your lineups as well?
He sure is. This could be, you never want to predict a 40-20 night, but the numbers kind of add up. And we've seen Davis do it already once this season, had that 70-plus DraftKings point night last week against Memphis. And, his baseline's basically been 45 to 50 DraftKings points, 45 on the really low end for his quote-unquote bad games. But he's kind of had a couple of subpar efforts, in the wake of that 70-plus DraftKings point game. And I think this is kind of, everything is culminating towards, a big kind of bounce-back performance, he's kind of self-hyped this game in Chicago. Not a guy who you necessarily think is like synonymous with Chicago. He's never really built this up in the past. It's clear that he's excited for this game. And, the rebounding for Chicago, they have big bodies. Lauri Markkanen, Wendell Carter, just guys who haven't rebounded at the rate we expected so far. I think Davis has a huge night on the glass. And I think, guys, where he can really make some hay tonight is at the free throw line. He had 27 free throw attempts in that 40-20 game against Memphis. Been to the line just 6 times over the last 2 games. I have a feeling that's going to change tonight.
Karin, I know he's a little more expensive, but let's not overthink it.
No, let's not overthink this at all. Pay the money for AD. The thing is, like, I'm always going to take guys when there's this narrative of a payback game, or if you're going against a team you used to play for, or if you're going home. Because when you think about it, basketball is the only sport where one guy can literally take over on both ends of the floor, because you can literally have the ball in your hands on every possession. And then on top of that, who's going to guard him? Like, I love Wendell Carter Jr. He's my guy, but it's the Bulls. AD's at home. They're trying to get him buckets and rebounds galore. This is a really, really easy one.
All right. It's a clean sweep. It is clear. Do not be an idiot. Please roster Anthony Davis. Thank you, friends. Let's wrap up the show with some NFL Week 10 spread chatter after Panel B gossips about the Browns.
If you're power ranking head coaches in the NFL, Kitchens, Gase, I'll throw Dan Quinn in there. Who's 32? Who's last?
It has to be Gase. Like, it's tough. Like, that's a hell of a group. But at least I'm changing my mind.
I'll rank him. The worst is Kitchens, the next worst is Gase, and then Dan Quinn.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that, because at least with the Browns, like, they are talented.
And then there's like 10
bottom.
more that all also suck.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Gase
But those got to be the bottom 3.
Oh,
or
by far.
Putting Flores down there. Flores is, like, there's just no talent on that team.
Yeah, Flores is fine. He can, let's see what he can do with a little bit more.
Garrett's got to be down there, though.
Sure.
Even with how the Cowboys.
Yeah,
I think
bottom
for him
3,
is more, it's like purely in-game.
Yeah.
Like, there's these teams, Kitchens and Gase in particular, it's more than just in-game. Like, because there were times this year, when Darnold was out, like, you knew Darnold was out.
Yeah.
And, like, what were you doing in the week leading up to it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you got to factor in the locker room as well. I think Cleveland's on its way to losing the locker room, but I think that's probably more on the Baker side even than on the Kitchen side with Gase. Like,
it's both.
I mean, it's open revolt at this point, it seems
Well, the other
like.
thing, too, and this is very minor, but I saw that Beckham and Landry came out with cleats that they weren't supposed to be wearing.
Yeah.
But it's just like, goes to the coaching. Like,
Right.
you should be nipping that before it even becomes a story.
I mean, Odell was wearing the watch week 1.
Yeah.
I think with those guys, like, if they're winning, it's just a story and it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, Antonio Brown had that during his heyday in Pittsburgh as well with certain cleats and stuff, and you just don't. It's a side story and it's a good, like, article to click on, but, like, it's not a talking point. Now, I mean, I agree that now when it is that bad, you just need to understand that these are the guys who aren't going to take it upon themselves and think, okay, this probably isn't the right time because we're playing terribly.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, Kitchens has no leg to stand on, though, for him to stand there and say, like, guys, listen to me, seriously.
Right. But just going off the losing the locker room talk, like, that's shows it to me. Like, you would never get away with that on the Patriots or whatnot. But the Browns, who are just in disarray, and then you got this sideshow stuff going on, like, just adds to the story.
All right, wrapping up the show with some NFL high or low. So are the following Week 10 spreads too high or too low? And to answer the questions I will be asking, our DraftKings contributors, Reed Fowler, Jeff Ulrich, and Pierce Dietrich.
And
Reed,
no fire alarm.
And no fire alarm. Thank you, Jeebus. Reed, you're laughing because, let me guess, Jeff was adjusting himself and is never settled in. It's either eating something, moving in the seat, or the mic.
Yeah, it's everything. It's great. Fantastic. It's his little, like, twitch before he gets ready.
It's good to have you here, Jeff, and I'll start with you. Why not? The Saints are the biggest favorites of the week when they host the Falcons. You think that 13-point spread is too high or too low?
Got me all rattled here. I know. I'm like the fidgetiest person on the face of the planet.
Yeah, I know, but that's why we get along, bud. We're both the same.
I mean, I mean, I'm not like a super favorite of betting the Saints here, and there's a couple reasons why that I'll go over. But I do think this spread is deserving. I mean, look, Atlanta's just terrible. I mean, they've been terrible all season. Their defense is just they can't stop anything. It's mostly their secondary and their lack of pass rush, but those are still going to be factors. One thing that scares me here, this is the Atlanta's first division game. They've had a very weird schedule.
Whoa.
They have basically 6 division games in like their last 8 weeks here, so that can sometimes play a factor. They've played the Saints pretty close in their past history, so you could see them get up just for one game here. I mean, they one thing they do okay is stop the run too, and that is one thing the Saints obviously will want to be doing. I still would have no trust in taking the Falcons on the spread. I think this spread is fine. I'm just throwing something out there if you're thinking of betting the Saints this week.
Reed, a 1-7 team against a 7-1 team.
Yeah. If you just look back since 2016, the Falcons actually, after a bye, they're 3-1 against the spread with a margin of victory of 14 points and a plus-minus of around 8.5. And so if you just superimpose those numbers into this year, you're like, okay, it's a good bet. But the Falcons are terrible. They can't stop anyone. I know they've been better against the run, but still, when you look at this offense, they just haven't been clicking. Yes, Matt Ryan's been good for fantasy, but they don't have a run game. It's Freeman out of the backfield in the passing game, and that's how they move the ball forward, which has been fine against the teams that they've played. But if you just look at in terms of the points that they've accumulated against those teams, they're not very good defenses. And so when they play a strong defense, they're tough. New Orleans is a strong defense. I think this is just fine. If it starts to go down to 12.5, I like the Saints even more, just because I like that number just a little bit more. But I think it's just fine.
And Pierce, according to the internet, the Saints have covered the last 3 times they've been favored by double digits.
It's a pretty steep number, but the Saints are coming off a bye. They're healthy. The Falcons are one of the worst pass defenses. And if you want to cover a big number, then the best way to get there is through the air against a bad pass defense. What I really like in Drew Brees' return, he connected with 9 different receivers. When he is spreading the ball all over the field, he's absolutely unstoppable. You get Kamara back. I know it's a high number, but the Saints are good and the Falcons are not good. Probably don't want to overthink it like we're Gary and Thorne.
Yeah, he does that all the time. 3 minutes left in the show. Let's pick up the pace a little bit. DK Sportsbook has the Browns as 3-point favorites at home when they host the Bills. Does that number seem too high or too low for Cleveland, who only has 2 wins this year, Reed?
Too high. Buffalo has won all their games on the road. They have a strong defense. They've been giving up a lot in the run game. And so if the Cleveland Browns do want to make this a respectable and accurate number, give the ball to Nick Chubb a lot. But I think this is too high.
Pierce.
Yeah, the Browns were favored last week. You see how that worked out? The public loves the Browns.
Yeah,
it's our fault. We were on here in the offseason talking about, the Browns are going to be good. The Browns are going to be good. They're not. They're the worst there is, the worst there was, the worst there ever will be. Get used to it. They're the clowns. The Bills getting points? What are we talking about? Take the Bills.
Yeah, Jeff, I know you were on that Browns bandwagon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm responsible for all of the snaps, trust me. I think at -3, it's way too big. I agree. I mean, the Browns aren't executing. It's ridiculous. I do think it's a good matchup for Nick Chubb to get going. I think if this goes down to a pick 'em, I would probably side with the Browns just for that reason. But at the same time, no way at 3 points, no.
All right, the Packers looking pitiful last week against the Chargers. Still 4.5-point favorites when they host the Panthers, who will not have Cam Newton the rest of the season. Still have Christian McCaffrey, though. Is this spread too high or too low, Pierce?
It might be just a tad bit high. Opened at 7 and then immediately got pushed down. Pretty disrespectful to the Panthers here. The Panthers have a pretty good pass defense, and they've got a good pass rush. The Packers have been good against protecting against the pass rush, but the last 2 games, they've allowed 8 sacks. That's a half the amount of sacks they've given up this year. I think this is a field goal game.
Yeah, Reed, you were just saying how hot the Panthers have been recently.
Yeah, they've been playing well, and Allen hasn't been making mistakes. And if you look at the 5 road games, Panthers are 4-1 against the spread. So I like the Panthers in this spot. Green Bay, get-right game right after their embarrassing game against the Chargers, but I still like the Panthers in this.
Jeff, who do you like in this spot?
I like the Panthers too. They're like a carbon copy of the Chargers, like a better version of the Chargers. They got a good pass rush, a great running back, a quarterback that's playing well. Like, they should be able to do a lot of the same things. Green Bay's going to have to stop the run. They're going to have to stop the pass rush. Like, I think 4.5, 5 points, that's too much.
All right, we've got a little more than a minute to go. Let's rip through this last one. Cowboys are 3-point favorites over the Vikings right now. Should this spread be higher or lower, Reed?
I think lower, 2.5. I think this is, again, a public team in Dallas. Vikings have a strong run defense.
Jeff?
I think it should be higher. It's a bad matchup for Minnesota. They have a really bad secondary right now. Xavier Rhodes getting burned. Amari Cooper's going to go for 200 yards in this game.
Ooh.
I think it's too low.
Pierce. Oh my gosh, it's back! No!
What does it even matter? Cowboys are going to win this. They've been really good at home. 11-2 in their last 13 at home.
Like the first test wasn't enough.
Oh, good grief.
It's serendipitous to end the show like
We
this.
almost got through all 4 clean without you. You! All right, my producer's saying wrap it up. We'll see you tomorrow at 6.
Bye.